In tears, she signed the divorce papers at the Thanksgiving party. His entire family laughed unaware. She is a billionaire who just saved their family business. What happens next shattered their world completely. Vivienne's tears splashed onto the divorce papers, blurring the ink as laughter surrounded her like wolves circling prey. The papers felt heavy in her hands, heavier than the silence that followed her signature, heavier than the weight of 2 years pretending to be someone she wasn't. Her husband pushed the documents closer, his smile cold and final. Sign it. End this charade. His brother raised his glass over her bowed head. To freedom from losers. They clinked glasses in celebration while his mother leaned forward, voice dripping with false sweetness. You thought you could trap my son with your little art projects. Back to your studio now, dear. Vivienne folded the papers carefully, precisely the way she folded corporate authorization documents, the way she'd folded the investment approval that had pumped $100 million into Sterling Pharmaceuticals 5 days ago. Saving them from the bankruptcy that would have erased 70 years of family legacy. His sister actually laughed. Women like you are not worthy to be part of our family. His grandmother raised her teacup with satisfaction. At least she signed the prenup without fuss. She leaves with nothing. Vivienne reached for her phone beneath the table and sent a message. 40 minutes later, the doorbell rang. His mother opened it to find 3 people in business suits. His father went pale. What are you doing at my home? They walked past him, scanning the room until their eyes found Vivienne. They bowed. Boss, we came immediately. His grandmother's teacup shattered against the floor. Vivienne stood, divorce papers in hand, her tears gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. The question tearing through that room wasn't just who she was. It was what she would do with the power they just discovered she held over everything they'd ever built. In this story, you will learn never to judge or mistreat people based on their appearance or status, because you never know who they truly are or what power they hold. Respect and kindness should be given freely to everyone regardless of their perceived value. And that cruelty always comes back to destroy those who practice it. Before we continue, kindly hit the subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from in the comment. The gallery smelled like rain and old wood. The kind of place where light filtered through dusty windows and caught particles dancing in the air. Vivienne's hands were covered in cerulean blue, her favorite color bleeding into the canvas before her. She didn't hear him enter. The bell above the door had broken weeks ago, and she kept forgetting to fix it. Is that for sale? She turned, brush still dripping, and found a man studying the painting with an intensity that surprised her. Not the polite interest most visitors showed, but genuine curiosity. His suit was expensive without being ostentatious. His tie loosened like he'd just escaped from somewhere more formal. It's not mine to sell, Vivienne said, wiping her hands on her apron. One of my students painted it. He stepped closer, tilting his head to catch the light on the brush strokes. She's talented. The way she captured the water, it feels alive. Something in Vivienne's chest loosened. She'd spent years dodging men who complimented her jewelry before her art, who asked about her car before her name, who saw dollar signs where her heart should be. This man hadn't even looked at her yet. Too absorbed in a teenager's watercolor. I'm Derek, he extended his hand, paint-stained fingers and all. Vivienne Harper, she replied, and the middle name slipped out so naturally she almost believed it herself. The lie was easy. Easier than explaining that Vivienne Hartwell was the woman on Forbes covers, the billionaire Aries, who couldn't walk into a room without someone calculating her net worth before her character. They talked until the sun dropped below the buildings outside, painting the gallery in amber and shadow. He told her about working at his family's pharmaceutical company, about the pressure of legacy and expectations. She told him about teaching art to kids who couldn't afford fancy studios, about believing creativity mattered more than profit margins. She didn't tell him about the properties she owned across 3 continents. She didn't tell him about the board meetings where men twice her age waited for her approval. She didn't tell him that the modest gallery where they stood was hers, bought with money she'd made before she turned 25. That first afternoon became coffee the next week, which became dinner the week after, which became late-night phone calls where Derek's voice sounded like home. The relationship moved fast, swept along by what felt like genuine connection. 6 months disappeared in a blur of farmers' market Sundays and movie theater dates. He never asked about her bank account, never questioned why she lived simply, never showed the calculated interest she'd learned to fear. The day he proposed, they were sitting on her apartment floor eating takeout from containers, no fancy restaurant, no audience, just him, nervous and genuine, pulling a simple ring from his pocket. "I don't have much," he said, his hand trembling slightly. "But I have love. If that's enough, it's everything," she whispered and meant it. The ring felt light on her finger, lighter than the weight of the truth she was still hiding. 6 months later, 3 months before the wedding, Catherine Ashford invited Vivienne to lunch at a restaurant where the water cost more than most people's dinner. The older woman's pearls caught the light as she leaned forward, her smile perfectly practiced. "You understand. We need to protect Derek," Catherine said, sliding papers across the white tablecloth. "The prenuptial agreement is standard. What you bring to the marriage stays yours. What we contribute stays ours." Vivienne read each line carefully, fighting the laugh building in her throat. They were protecting their pharmaceutical company worth maybe $50 million on a good day from her. They thought she was the fortune hunter. They thought their son was the prize. "Where do I sign?" Vivienne asked, her voice soft and compliant. Richard Ashford nodded approvingly from across the table, probably thinking his legal expertise had just saved the family from a gold digger. None of them noticed the irony sitting right in front of them, that the document they thought protected their wealth was actually shielding her billions from their eventual greed. Derek apologized that night, pulling her close in the darkness of her apartment. "I'm sorry about my parents. They're just cautious." "I understand," she said into his shoulder, wondering when caution had become cruelty, when protection had turned into condescension. The wedding was small, intimate, they called it, though Vivienne knew the truth. Derek's family didn't want to waste money celebrating his marriage to someone they considered beneath them. Catherine wore white to the ceremony, a subtle message Vivienne pretended not to understand. Richard gave a toast about love conquering all obstacles, his eyes lingering on Vivienne when he said, "obstacles." Gabriella, Derek's sister, drank too much champagne and whispered loudly to Trevor about mistakes you can't undo. Vivienne smiled through it all, her hand in Derek's, her secret wrapped around her like armor. They found a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy but theirs. 2 bedrooms, morning light through east-facing windows, a kitchen where Vivienne learned to cook meals. Derek's mother would critique every Sunday because Sunday dinners at the Ashford mansion became mandatory. Catherine's rule enforced with guilt and passive aggression. "Family is important," Catherine would say, her hand on Derek's shoulder, her eyes dismissing Vivienne entirely. The first year of marriage passed in a strange dance of 2 lives. During the day, Vivienne worked at the gallery, teaching children to see beauty in ordinary things. At night, after Derek fell asleep, she worked from the second bedroom they'd turned into her art studio, running her empire from a laptop while he assumed she was sketching. James Crawford, her attorney, called at midnight. Diana Foster, her CFO, sent encrypted files at 3 a.m. Jonathan Pierce video-conferenced from Tokyo while Derek snored softly in the next room. "You can't keep this up forever," James said during one of their secret meetings at a downtown office Derek would never visit. "The double life is exhausting you." "I can keep it up as long as I need to," Vivienne replied. But her reflection in the window looked tired. The cracks started showing by the middle of the second year. Derek coming home later, his enthusiasm for their life together, fading like old photographs. Not another woman, just a man, slowly realizing he'd married someone his family would never accept, and choosing them over her in 1,000 small ways. Sunday dinners became worse. Gabriella's comments growing sharper. Catherine's disappointed sighs more frequent. Richard's barely concealed contempt whenever Vivienne spoke. "You wouldn't understand pharmaceutical markets," Richard said one Sunday, his tone dismissive. "It's complex, technical." Vivienne bit her tongue, swallowing the response that she owned controlling shares in 3 pharmaceutical companies larger than his. She smiled and instead played the role they'd written for her, the simple artist who'd gotten lucky marrying up. Derek never defended her, not once in 2 years. The Sunday dinners became a ritual of small cruelties. Catherine commenting on Vivienne's clothes, her hair, her quaint career. Richard making jokes about artists and real work. Trevor and Gabriella exchanging glances whenever Vivienne spoke. And Derek sat at that table and let it happen. Week after week, month after month. But late at night in her secret office, she still ran an empire. Diana sent her quarterly reports on pharmaceutical companies, market analysis, financial health assessments, acquisition opportunities. Hartwell Global Industries had interests in biotech and tracking the sector was standard business practice. Sterling Pharmaceuticals kept appearing in the reports. Each quarter, the numbers got worse. "They're declining rapidly," Diana reported during a secure video call. Richard Ashford's management decisions are destroying the company. They've lost 3 major contracts in the last 6 months. Vivienne looked at the spreadsheets, columns of red numbers, telling a story of incompetence and arrogance. The same Richard Ashford who dismissed her at dinner was running a 70-year-old company into the ground. "Keep monitoring," Vivienne said quietly. 2 years of marriage, 2 years of being treated like she was worthless. 2 years of watching Derek transform from the man who loved a teenager's watercolor into someone who valued his family's approval more than her dignity. Then came the call that changed everything. 1 week before Thanksgiving, Diana's voice came through Vivienne's phone, urgent and clipped. "Sterling Pharmaceuticals just got hit with loan recalls. Their largest creditor is demanding immediate payment. They're going public looking for investors." Vivienne pulled up the financial news. There it was. Sterling Pharmaceuticals faces bankruptcy, seeks emergency funding. Timeline? Vivienne asked. "They have until Monday, 6 days from now. After that, it's liquidation." Vivienne thought about the 400 employees who would lose everything. Thought about Derek's family and their cruelty. Thought about 2 years of being treated like she was nothing while sitting on billions they couldn't imagine. "Prepare an offer," she said. $100 million anonymous through V. Hartwell Investments. Terms $1,000 monthly return. Diana paused. "That's nothing. They'll be suspicious. They'll be too desperate to question it. And I want to see something." "What?" "How they treat someone they think is beneath them." The offer went out within hours. James made the call, his voice professional and detached as he spoke to Richard Ashford. $100 million. James said, "Immediate wire transfer. Our only requirement is $1,000 monthly." Richard's laughter came through tiny on the speaker. $1,000. Is this a joke? Those are our terms. Accept or decline. The pause lasted 3 seconds. We accept. The money transferred that afternoon. By evening, Derek came home different, lighter, almost happy for the first time in months. We were saved, he said, actually smiling at her. Some anonymous investor gave us $100 million for basically nothing. Dad can't believe it. Mom's already planning a celebration. That's wonderful, Vivienne said and meant it in ways he couldn't understand. They want to do Thanksgiving at the house. Big celebration, the whole family. Dad's calling it our gratitude dinner. Derek pulled her close, his first affectionate gesture in weeks. Things are going to be different now. Better. I can feel it. Vivienne leaned into him, feeling the irony press against her chest like a stone. I'm sure they will be. The next few days passed in a blur of Catherine's phone calls about menu planning and Gabriella's texts about what to wear. The family's relief was palpable. They'd been saved from ruin and they didn't even know who to thank. Sunday dinner that week was different. The family was almost giddy. Richard kept checking his phone, watching the money sit in their accounts like he couldn't believe it was real. Catherine actually complimented Vivienne's dress, a rare moment of civility born from relief. "This Thanksgiving will be special," Eleanor said, her aged voice carrying across the table. "A celebration of survival, of family." Trevor raised his glass. "To mysterious idiots with more money than sense." They all laughed, including Derek. Vivienne smiled, her hand steady on her wine glass. "Can you imagine?" Gabriella said, shaking her head. 100 million for a 000 a month. Whoever invested must be desperately stupid. Or desperately generous, Vivienne said quietly. The table went silent for a moment. Everyone looking at her like she'd spoken out of turn. Then Richard cleared his throat. "Generosity in business is just stupidity with better PR," he said, and the table laughed again, the moment passing. Vivienne said nothing more, just watched them celebrate their salvation by mocking their savior. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright. Vivienne stood in their apartment bedroom, choosing her outfit carefully. A simple dress, nothing expensive, exactly what Derek's family expected from her. She applied light makeup, tied her hair back, looked at herself in the mirror. 2 years of pretending, 2 years of hiding, 2 years of being treated like she was less than, while secretly being more than they could comprehend. Derek came up behind her, adjusting his tie. "You ready?" "Ready," she said. They drove to the mansion in comfortable silence. Derek seemed relaxed, happier than she'd seen him in months. The financial crisis being resolved had lifted a weight she hadn't fully understood he was carrying. "Thank you," he said suddenly as they pulled into the circular driveway. "For what?" "For sticking with me through all this. I know my family can be difficult, but you never complained. You just stayed." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "That means something." Vivienne looked at their joined hands, at the simple ring she still wore, at the man who'd let his family belittle her for 2 years without ever once standing up for her dignity. "Yes," she said softly. "I stayed." The mansion was decorated like something from a magazine. Catherine had gone all out. Fall arrangements on every surface. The dining room table set with china that probably cost more than most people's cars. Candles flickering in crystal holders. The smell of roasting turkey filled the air mixed with sweet potatoes and some expensive wine. Richard was already pouring. "There they are," Catherine called out, her arms spread wide. She hugged Derek tightly, then gave Vivienne a brief, obligatory embrace that barely counted as contact. "Come in. Come in. We're celebrating today." The family gathered in the living room. Richard by the fireplace, looking more relaxed than Vivienne had ever seen him. Gabriella and Trevor on the sofa, already working on their second drinks. Elena in her usual chair, watching everything with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "To family," Richard said, raising his glass. "And to miraculous salvation," they all drank. The mood light and easy. For once, Vivienne wasn't being attacked or dismissed. For once she was simply there, part of the background of their celebration. She should have known something was wrong. Should have recognized the calm before the storm, should have seen the glances passing between Derek and his mother, the way his father kept checking his watch, the strange energy humming beneath the gratitude and relief. But she didn't. She just smiled and nodded and let herself believe for one foolish moment that maybe things really had changed. Catherine called them to dinner. They moved to the dining room, taking their usual seats. Vivienne at the far end, furthest from Richard at the head. The placement itself was a message she'd learned to ignore. The turkey was carved. Plates were filled. Wine was poured. The conversation flowed around her, through her, occasionally including her in ways that felt almost normal. Then Derek stood up. "I want to say something," he announced, tapping his glass with a knife. The table quieted, all eyes turning to him. "Today, we're celebrating being saved. Our company, our legacy, our family, all of it rescued by some anonymous investor we'll never meet." Nods around the table, murmurs of agreement. "But I also want to celebrate something else," Derek continued, and his hand moved to his jacket pocket. "A different kind of freedom." Vivienne's stomach dropped. Something in his tone, in the way his mother was smiling, and how the whole table seemed to lean forward in anticipation. Derek pulled out folded papers. Legal documents. Even from across the table, Vivienne could see the header. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "I think it's time we were honest," Derek said, his eyes finally meeting hers. "This marriage was a mistake. We both know it. My family knows it. It's time to end it properly." The papers landed in front of her plate with a soft thud that sounded like thunder in her ears. Vivienne stared at the divorce papers like they were written in a language she'd forgotten how to read. The room tilted slightly. Or maybe that was just her world shifting off its axis. Around the table, champagne glasses caught the candle light, creating tiny prisms of color that felt obscene against what was happening. "Derek, what?" she started, but her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Sign them," he said, and there was no warmth in his tone, no apology, just finality. "Let's not drag this out." Catherine raised her glass with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "To new beginnings." The table erupted in agreement. Trevor actually clinked his glass against Gabriella's. Richard nodded approvingly from the head of the table like Derek had just made a smart business decision. Ella Laner sipped her tea, silent, but clearly in agreement with the proceedings. "You planned this," Vivienne whispered, her eyes moving from Derek to his mother to his father. "You planned this for today, for Thanksgiving." "It seemed appropriate," Catherine said, her voice honey-sweet and poisonous. "A day of gratitude. We're grateful to be rid of dead weight." Gabriella laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. 2 years of pretending was generous, really. Most of us wanted Derek to end it after the first 6 months. "You thought you could trap our son," Richard said, leaning back in his chair. "Thought marrying into this family would elevate you, but you can't turn trash into treasure, dear." The words hit like physical blows, each one landing with precision. Vivienne's hands trembled as she picked up the papers, her vision blurring. "Not now," she thought. "Don't cry now." But her body betrayed her, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. "Just sign it," Derek said, his voice almost bored. "The prenup protects both of us. You leave with what you came with. Nothing. We keep what's ours, clean and simple." Trevor leaned forward, his smile predatory. "Back to your little art projects. Maybe you can sell paintings on the street corner. Women like you always land on their feet," Catherine added. Her tone dripping with false sympathy. "I'm sure you'll find another target soon enough." Vivienne's hand found the pen beside her plate. Her fingers wrapped around it, feeling its weight. 2 years of this. 2 years of smiling through their cruelty, hoping Derek would finally stand up for her. 2 years of hiding who she really was, only to discover it wouldn't have mattered. They would have hated her regardless for being an outsider. For not being one of them, for existing in their perfect family portrait. "Sign it and end this charade," Derek repeated, pushing the papers closer to her. Her tears fell onto the pages, blurring ink she could barely focus on. Around her, the family raised their glasses higher, celebrating her destruction like it was entertainment. Catherine snapped a photo with her phone, preserving Vivienne's humiliation for posterity. "Smile for the camera, dear." Catherine cooped. Vivienne didn't smile. Her hand shook as she pressed pen to paper, but she signed. Each letter of her name felt like giving away a piece of herself, but she wrote it anyway. Vivienne Harper, the fake name she'd used for 3 years, the identity she'd hidden behind to find real love. Finally, Gabriella said, actually applauding. Our brother is free. To freedom from losers, Trevor raised his glass. They clinked glasses over her bowed head, their laughter surrounding her like wolves that had finally brought down their prey. Richard smiled with satisfaction. Catherine looked triumphant. Eleanor nodded approvingly. And Derek just looked relieved. Vivienne folded the papers carefully, precisely, her hands steadier now. The crying had stopped. Something cold had settled in her chest where warmth used to live. She reached beneath the table for her phone, her movements deliberate and calm. 3 words typed quickly. Come here now. She sent it to 3 contacts and set her phone face down beside her plate. Well, Richard said, standing with his wine glass. Now we can truly celebrate. Our company saved, our family freed from an unfortunate mistake. This Thanksgiving we have much to be grateful for. To the mysterious investor, Catherine said, raising her glass. Whoever was stupid enough to give us 100 million for a 000 a month. Probably some trust fund baby who doesn't understand real money, Trevor added. Or someone desperate for any return at all, Gabriella chimed in, imagine being that pathetic. They laughed again, the sound filling the dining room. Vivienne sat silent at the far end of the table, watching them mock the person who'd saved everything they had, watching them reveal exactly who they were when they thought someone was beneath them. You know what? I heard, Trevor continued, warming to his subject. The investor demanded we pay them every month like they need our $1,000. It's embarrassing. We joke about it at every board meeting, Richard admitted, smiling. The cheapest bailout in pharmaceutical history. Our staff thinks it's hilarious. Have you made the payments? Vivienne asked quietly. The table turned to look at her, surprised she'd spoken. Of course, Richard said dismissively. We're not savages. We honor our contracts, even ridiculous ones. But we laugh every time we wire the money, Catherine added. $1,000 to someone with 100 million. It's absurd. Vivienne checked her watch. 5 minutes since she'd sent the message. Her team would need time to get here from the city. 35 more minutes, maybe 40 if traffic was bad. More wine? Catherine asked, her tone suggesting Vivienne should probably leave now that the papers were signed. No, thank you, Vivienne said. I'll wait. Wait for what? Derek asked, his brow furrowing. For what comes next? An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Eleanor set down her teacup, studying Vivienne with those sharp eyes. You can go now, Gabriella said, her voice edged with irritation. The papers are signed. There's no reason for you to stay. I'd like to finish Thanksgiving dinner, Vivienne replied calmly. If that's all right, Catherine's smile tightened. I suppose a last meal is appropriate. They ate in strange silence after that, the celebration dampened by Vivienne's continued presence. She'd ruined their perfect moment by not running away crying, by sitting there calm and composed like she knew something they didn't. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The family's conversation restarted, but quieter now, more cautious. They kept glancing at Vivienne, at her stillness, at the way she hadn't fallen apart the way they'd expected. Derek leaned toward her. You should probably go soon. This is awkward. 40 minutes, Vivienne said softly. I'll leave in 40 minutes. Why 40 minutes? You'll see. 35 minutes. Richard stood to carve more turkey, trying to recapture the celebratory mood. Catherine refilled wine glasses. Trevor made a joke that fell flat. Gabriella checked her phone. Bored now that the entertainment was over. 38 minutes 39. The doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Catherine set down her wine glass. Richard's knife stopped mid-slice. Derek's eyes moved from the door to Vivienne. Confusion written across his face. Who could that be? Catherine asked. We're not expecting anyone. I am, Vivienne said quietly. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Catherine stood smoothing her dress, probably planning to dismiss whoever it was quickly. She walked to the front door, heels clicking against marble. The family waited, in tense silence, listening. The door opened, voices low, professional, unfamiliar. I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of a private family dinner. Catherine's voice. We're here to see Vivienne Hartwell. A woman's voice, crisp and authoritative. Vivienne heard the sharp intake of breath, saw Catherine stumble backward into view, her face white. 3 people stepped into the entrance hall. James Crawford in his perfectly tailored suit, briefcase in hand. Diana Foster, her red hair pulled back severe and professional, tablet already lit up in her hands. Jonathan Pierce, tall and imposing, his presence filling the space like he owned it. They walked past Catherine without waiting for permission, their eyes scanning the dining room until they landed on Vivienne. Richard stood so quickly, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. What are you doing in my home? How did you get this address? The 3 visitors ignored him completely. They walked straight to Vivienne, and as they reached her, they did something that made the entire Ashford family freeze. They bowed, not a casual nod. A deep, respectful bow that spoke of hierarchy and power. Boss, James said, straightening. We came immediately when we saw your message. Is everything all right, Miss Hartwell? Diana asked, her voice carrying concern. We left everything, Jonathan added. What do you need? Eleanor's teacup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. The sound echoed in the absolute silence that followed. Richard's face had drained of all color. His hand gripped the back of his chair so hard his knuckles went white. Catherine stood frozen in the doorway, her mouth open, but no sound coming out. Derek stared at Vivienne like she was a stranger, like the woman he'd just divorced had never existed at all. Boss. Gabriella whispered, her voice cracking. They called her boss. Trevor's champagne glass slipped from his nerveless fingers. Wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. James pulled out his tablet, his expression, all business. We have the withdrawal documents prepared as you requested, pending your final authorization. Withdrawal? Richard's voice came out strangled. What withdrawal? Diana turned to face him for the first time, her expression cold. The $100 million investment in Sterling Pharmaceuticals. Ms. Hartwell is exercising her right to withdraw the funds as outlined in the contract your company signed. Ms. Hartwell, Catherine repeated, the name sounding foreign in her mouth. Jonathan crossed his arms. Vivienne Harper Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Global Industries, net worth approximately $3.7 billion. She's been operating under her middle name for the past 3 years. The words fell like bombs across the dining room, each one detonating a piece of the Ashford family's understanding of reality. That's impossible, Richard whispered. We investigated her. She worked at a gallery. She lived in a tiny apartment. She owned the gallery, James corrected. She owned the building the apartment was in. She owned quite a lot of things, Mr. Ashford. She just chose to live simply. Gabriella's face had gone gray. The investor, V. Hartwell, Vivienne Harper Hartwell. Oh, God. Trevor breathed. Catherine grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. The anonymous investor who saved our company was sitting at your table, Diana finished. The woman you just humiliated and divorced is the person who wired $100 million into your dying company 5 days ago. Eleanor closed her eyes, her aged face collapsing in on itself. Derek made a sound like he'd been punched. No, no, that's not. You can't be. Vivienne stood slowly, divorce papers still in her hand. When she spoke, her voice was no longer soft or accommodating. It carried the weight of boardrooms and billions of power she'd hidden for too long. I demanded $1,000 monthly, she said, her eyes moving across each face at the table. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted to see how you treat someone you thought was desperate, someone you believed was beneath you. Every board meeting you mocked that investor, Diana added, reading from her tablet. We have recordings. Pathetic, desperate, stupid. Those were the words you used. The investor you laughed about, Vivienne continued, was the same person you've been laughing at for 2 years. I saved your company while you treated me like garbage. I rescued 70 years of your family legacy while you called me worthless. Richard collapsed into his chair. Catherine's hand flew to her throat, her pearls clicking together. The prenup you forced me to sign, Vivienne said, looking directly at Derek. Protected what each of us brought to the marriage. You thought you were protecting your family's money from me. She smiled cold and sharp. You were actually protecting my billions from you. Derek's face crumpled. Vivienne, I didn't know if I had known. That's exactly the point. She cut him off. You didn't know I had money, so you treated me like I was nothing. Money shouldn't have changed how you saw me. Basic human decency shouldn't require a price tag. She turned to James. Withdraw the investment. All of it. Immediately. No. Richard surged to his feet. You can't. We have a contract. A contract that allows withdrawal within 90 days under specific conditions, James said smoothly. It's been 5 days and the conditions have certainly been met. What conditions? Derek's voice cracked. Good faith, Vivienne said simply. Respect for the investor. Your company violated both spectacularly. We didn't know it was you. Catherine's voice rose desperate. Ow. You didn't need to know it was me, Vivienne replied. You just needed to be decent human beings. You failed. Gabriella stood, her chair scraping. You can't do this to us. We're family. I signed the papers, remember? Vivienne held up the divorce documents. I'm not family anymore. Your words, not mine. The reality was crashing down on them. Now, visible in every face. Richard's hands trembling, Catherine's tears starting, Eleanor's resignation, Trevor's panic, Gabriella's horror, and Derek staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time, finally understanding what he'd just destroyed. By Monday morning, Vivienne said to James, her voice steady and final, I want every dollar withdrawn from Sterling Pharmaceuticals. Terminate all cooperation. End all contracts. Vivienne, please. Derek reached for her hand. She pulled away before he could touch her, the movement graceful and absolute. 2 years of his touch, and now she couldn't bear even a second of it. You wanted me to sign the papers, she said quietly. You wanted this divorce in front of your family to humiliate me. Congratulations, Derek. You got exactly what you wanted. She turned toward the door, James, Diana, and Jonathan falling into formation behind her. At the threshold, she paused, looking back one final time at the Ashford family sitting among the ruins of their Thanksgiving celebration. I hope the $1,000 a month was worth it, she said. It cost you everything. Then Vivienne Harper Hartwell walked out into the November night, leaving behind the family that had never deserved her and the fortune they would lose because they'd been too cruel to see what was right in front of them. Behind her, in the mansion, someone started crying. She didn't turn around to see who. The door closed behind Vivienne with a soft click that sounded nothing like the destruction it represented. James, Diana, and Jonathan followed her down the mansion steps. Their presence a protective shield against the chaos erupting inside the house she'd just left. Behind them, through the windows, shadows moved frantically. Raised voices, the sound of something breaking, Catherine's wail cutting through the night air like a siren. The car is waiting, James said quietly, gesturing toward the black sedan, idling at the curb. Vivienne paused at the bottom step, breathing in the cold November air. It tasted like freedom, like ending, like the first clean breath after being underwater too long. Ms. Hartwell. Diana's voice held concern. Are you all right? I don't know yet, Vivienne replied honestly. Ask me tomorrow. They drove in silence through the city, street lights painting streaks across the sedan's windows. Vivienne watched the world pass by, feeling untethered from everything. The weight of 2 years of pretending, of hiding, of enduring lifted slowly, leaving her feeling strangely hollow. The withdrawal will process Monday morning, James said from the front seat. Legal has confirmed all contracts allow for immediate termination under the breach of good faith clause. Their company won't survive it, Jonathan added, his tone matter of fact. They're leveraged too heavily without that capital infusion bankruptcy by Wednesday, Thursday at the latest. Vivienne said nothing, just watched the city lights blur together. The 400 employees, she said finally, make sure they're protected. Diana nodded, already typing on her tablet. Anonymous severance fund, 6-month salary, job placement assistance. A year, Vivienne corrected, and full benefits during the transition. They didn't deserve this. They just worked for the wrong people. Done, Diana said. It'll be set up by morning. The car pulled up to Vivienne's real residence. Not the modest apartment Derek knew about, but the penthouse she'd owned for 6 years. 47th floor, floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking the city she'd helped build. Well, handle everything from here, James said as they reached the lobby. You should rest. I don't think I can, Vivienne replied, but she nodded anyway. Thank you all of you for coming so quickly. Diana touched her arm gently. We've been waiting for that call for 2 years, boss. Honestly, we're relieved you finally made it. They left her at the elevator. Vivienne rode up alone, watching the city drop away beneath her through the glass walls. Somewhere out there, Derek was realizing what he'd lost. His family was calculating how quickly their world would collapse. Catherine was probably already calling lawyers who couldn't help them. The penthouse was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Clean, minimal, expensive without being ostentatious. Her real life preserved in amber while she played pretend in Derek's world. Vivienne stood at the window still wearing the simple dress Catherine had once mocked as discount store fashion. A dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, custom-made by a designer who only worked with private clients. The irony would have been funny if everything didn't hurt so much. Her phone buzzed. 37 missed calls. Derek's name filled the screen. Each call time-stamped minutes apart. Then text started flooding in. Please call me. We need to talk. Vivienne, I didn't know. You have to understand. My family didn't mean those things. They were just joking. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I love you. I always loved you. She turned her phone off without responding. Some conversations didn't deserve to happen. 1 week later, the news broke on Monday morning exactly as Diana had predicted. Sterling Pharmaceuticals files for bankruptcy after major investor withdrawal. The business networks ran the story all day, analyzing what had gone wrong, speculating about the mysterious investor who'd pulled funding so abruptly. By Wednesday, the company was in liquidation. 70 years of Ashford family legacy dissolved in 72 hours. Vivienne watched the coverage from her office at Hartwell Global Industries, her real office with her real team and her real identity finally fully restored. Diana brought her updates every few hours. The mansion's been listed for sale, Diana reported. Below market value, they need cash fast. The employees? Vivienne asked, severance fund activated. All 400 received notification this morning. Anonymous donor as requested. Most of them already have interviews lined up with our partner companies. Good. Jonathan appeared in the doorway. The pharmaceutical industry is buzzing. Everyone wants to know who V. Hartwell really is and why they pulled funding so dramatically. Let them wonder. Vivienne said quietly. Your identity is going to come out eventually, James warned, entering behind Jonathan. Someone will connect the dots. Vivienne Hartwell mysteriously appears the same week Vivienne Harper gets divorced from a sterling pharmaceuticals heir. I know, Vivienne said. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm done pretending to be someone smaller to make other people comfortable. 3 weeks later. The letter arrived via courier on a Tuesday afternoon. Heavy cream paper, elegant handwriting, Eleanor Ashford's return address embossed in the corner. Vivienne almost didn't open it, almost threw it away without reading. But something in the weight of it, the careful formality, made her curious. She opened it at her desk, alone in her office, as the city sparkled 47 floors below. Dear Vivienne, I know I have no right to ask for your time, much less your forgiveness. I won't insult you by trying. I am 83 years old. I have watched my family build an empire over 3 generations. I have seen us at our best, innovative, hardworking, committed to helping people through medicine. And I have seen us at our worst, which is what you witnessed. We were cruel to you, not because you deserved it, but because you were different. Because you didn't fit the mold we'd created for who belonged in our family. Because we were small people who made ourselves feel bigger by making you feel smaller. The cruelest irony is that you had more wealth than we could imagine. Yet, you worked a regular job, lived modestly, and loved my grandson genuinely. You were everything we pretended to value. Humility, hard work, authenticity. We just couldn't see it because we were too busy judging the surface. You didn't just save our company with that investment. You tried to save us from ourselves. You gave us a test, $1,000 monthly, a pittance to someone with your resources. You wanted to see if we'd honor even a small obligation to someone we deemed beneath us. We failed spectacularly. Every board meeting, we laughed about the desperate investor. Every payment, we mocked the person keeping us afloat. We never imagined that the person we were ridiculing was sitting at our Sunday dinners, listening to us reveal exactly who we were. The company is gone now. The mansion will sell next week. We're moving into a small apartment in the city. Richard, Catherine, and myself. The children have scattered to find their own ways. Derek is broken. Though I suspect you don't care anymore. You shouldn't. I don't write this letter seeking reconciliation. That bridge isn't just burned. It never actually existed. You tried to build it for 2 years and we kept tearing it down. I write only to say this. Thank you. Thank you for the anonymous severance fund that protected 400 innocent people from our failures. Thank you for making sure our employees landed safely while we fell. Thank you for punishing the guilty without destroying the innocent. You taught an old woman that dignity isn't bought. It's earned through how we treat others when we think no one important is watching. You were always important, Vivienne. We were just too foolish, too cruel, too blinded by our own sense of superiority to see it. I hope you find someone worthy of the love you tried to give my grandson. I hope you build a life surrounded by people who see your value without needing a net worth statement to recognize it. And I hope, though I don't deserve it, that you remember us not just as the people who hurt you, but as a cautionary tale about what happens when we forget that wealth without character is the truest poverty with profound regret and unearned respect. Eleanor Ashford. Vivienne read the letter twice, then set it down on her desk. A single tear tracked down her cheek, but she was smiling, not with satisfaction or vindication, but with something quieter, something like closure. She walked to her window, looking out at the city she'd helped shape. Somewhere out there, Derek was learning to live without her. His family was learning to live without their legacy. And Vivienne was learning that the best revenge wasn't destroying people who hurt you. It was simply walking away and letting them face the consequences of their own choices. 1 month later, Vivienne sat in her office reviewing acquisition proposals when Diana entered with her tablet and a strange expression. "You need to see this," Diana said, turning the screen toward her. A news article. Derek Ashford enters treatment for gambling addiction, seeks to rebuild life after losing everything. Thank you for the anonymous severance fund that protected 400 innocent people from our failures. Thank you for making sure our employees landed safely while we fell. Thank you for punishing the guilty without destroying the innocent. You taught an old woman that dignity isn't bought. It's earned through how we treat others when we think no one important is watching. You were always important, Vivienne. We were just too foolish, too cruel, too blinded by our own sense of superiority to see it. I hope you find someone worthy of the love you tried to give my grandson. I hope you build a life surrounded by people who see your value without needing a net worth statement to recognize it. And I hope, though I don't deserve it, that you remember us not just as the people who hurt you, but as a cautionary tale about what happens when we forget that wealth without character is the truest poverty with profound regret and unearned respect. Billionaire Ashford. The photo showed Derek leaving a rehabilitation facility. His face gaunt, his eyes haunted. The article detailed gambling debts Vivienne had secretly paid for years. Choices he'd made that had contributed to his family's financial instability, demons he'd hidden behind his family's name and money. He's finally facing it, Vivienne said quietly. Without money to hide behind, without family to bail him out. Is that justice? Diana asked. No, Vivienne replied. It's just consequence. Justice would be if he'd been a better person in the first place. She closed the article, returning to her work. Derek's journey wasn't hers anymore. His healing or destruction wasn't her responsibility. 6 weeks post-divorce. The divorce was finalized on a gray December morning in a courthouse that smelled like old paper and regret. Vivienne arrived with James. Derek arrived alone. The judge reviewed the prenuptial agreement with disinterested efficiency. All property owned or controlled prior to marriage remains with the original owner. Mr. Ashford, you are awarded what you brought into this marriage. Derek's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, my client contests. On what grounds? The judge interrupted. The lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. There were no grounds. The prenup was airtight, and Derek had signed it eagerly, certain he was protecting his family's wealth from her. Mrs. Hartwell. The judge said, you retain all assets, properties, and holdings listed in your personal financial disclosure. Ms. Hartwell. Vivienne corrected gently. I'm returning to my family name. The judge nodded, making the notation. Ms. Hartwell. Then, Mr. Ashford, you are awarded your personal belongings, and the judge paused, reviewing documents. It appears that several assets in your name were purchased with funds traced to Ms. Hartwell's accounts during the marriage. Derek's face went white. Those were gifts. She covered your debts, James interjected smoothly, sliding documents across to the judge. Gambling losses primarily, substantial sums over 2 years, which means the assets purchased with those funds technically belong to her, not him. The judge reviewed the paperwork with raised eyebrows. Mr. Ashford, it appears you are leaving this marriage with precisely what you brought into it. A pause, which according to these financial records is approximately $17,000 in student loan debt and a 23-year-old car. The gavel came down. Marriage dissolved. 2 years erased in 10 minutes of legal procedure. Outside the courthouse, Derek caught Vivienne's arm. She stopped but didn't pull away. Just looked at his hand on her sleeve until he released it. I loved you, he said, his voice breaking. I know you don't believe that now, but I did. I do. You loved who you thought I was, Vivienne corrected. You loved the version of me that made you feel superior. The moment you believed I had nothing, you loved me. The moment you discovered I had everything, you couldn't stand to look at me. That's not fair. You handed me divorce papers at Thanksgiving dinner. Vivienne said quietly, in front of your family to humiliate me. You don't get to lecture me about fair. Derek's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong about everything. I see that now. Good, Vivienne said. Maybe that means you'll be better to the next person. Maybe you'll learn that people's value isn't measured by their bank accounts. Maybe you'll stand up to your family next time they're cruel to someone you claim to love. There won't be a next person, Derek said. There's only you. There was only me, Vivienne corrected. Past tense. The woman you married doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. I was playing a role, Derek, pretending to be smaller, quieter, less than I am. And you never once asked me why. Never once questioned if there was more to me than what you saw. She stepped back, creating distance between them that felt bigger than just physical space. I hope you get better, she said, and meant it. I hope you face your demons and become someone worthy of real love. But that person won't be me. I'm done shrinking myself to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. She walked away then, leaving Derek standing on the courthouse steps, finally understanding what he'd thrown away, finally seeing what had been right in front of him all along. 2 months later, Vivienne stood in her new art studio. Not the small gallery where she'd first met Derek, but a state-of-the-art facility she'd built in a neighborhood that needed beauty. Floor-to-ceiling windows, professional equipment, space for 50 students. The grand opening was today. Teenagers from the community filled the space, their faces bright with possibility. No one here knew she was a billionaire. No one cared. They just knew she was the woman who'd given them paints and canvases and a space to create. M. Hartwell, a girl of about 14, approached, holding a watercolor painting of the city skyline. Just Vivienne, she corrected with a smile. Is this any good? The girl asked nervously. Vivienne studied the painting. The way light caught on windows, the way shadows fell between buildings, the life captured in careful brush strokes. It's beautiful, Vivienne said honestly. The way you captured the water. It feels alive. The girl beamed, and something in Vivienne's chest loosened. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not vindication, not watching people who hurt her suffer. Just this beauty created, potential nurtured, life lived without pretending to be someone smaller. Diana appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. The board meeting is in an hour, and you have 17 interview requests about the sterling pharmaceutical situation. Decline them all, Vivienne said, not looking away from the students. I'm not interested in telling that story. What should I tell them? That some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to teach us where not to walk again. That evening, alone in her penthouse, Vivienne opened Eleanor's letter one final time. Read it slowly, carefully, letting the words settle. Then she placed it in a box with her wedding photos, the prenup, the divorce papers, everything from those 2 years, everything from the person she'd been when she thought hiding was safer than being seen. She closed the box and put it in storage. Not thrown away. That felt dishonest, like pretending it hadn't happened, but stored away. Acknowledged, but finished. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. The severance fund has placed all 400 employees. Last one started her new job today. Vivienne smiled, typing back, thank you. Another text, this time from Diana. Richard Ashford filed for personal bankruptcy this afternoon. Catherine's jewelry is being auctioned next week. Vivienne didn't smile at that. Didn't feel satisfaction or joy. Just a quiet, neutral acknowledgement that consequences had arrived, as consequences always do. She walked to her window, looking out at the city, lit up against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Derek was learning to live without his family's money or name. His parents were learning that empires built on arrogance crumble quickly. His siblings were learning that cruelty has costs they couldn't afford. And Eleanor was learning that wisdom, however profound, comes too late sometimes to save anything except the lesson itself. Vivienne thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, walking into that gallery, believing she could find love if she just hid her wealth, believing the problem was her billions, not the people who only saw billions. She'd been wrong. The problem was never her wealth or success. The problem was choosing people who needed her to be less so. They could feel like more. A new text appeared on her phone from a number she didn't recognize. I saw the article about your studio. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. I'm sorry I never saw it. Vivienne read it once, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were already finished, even if one person didn't know it yet. She poured herself wine, expensive and rare, the kind she used to hide from Derek so he wouldn't know she could afford it. She drank it slowly, savoring every drop, toasting silently to the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become, to pretending and revealing, to hiding and being seen, to 2 years of playing small and the rest of her life refusing to ever shrink again. Outside, Clear's throat, her window, the city glittered with possibility. Tomorrow she'd wake up as herself, fully, completely, without apology. She'd run her empire and teach her students and build her life exactly as she wanted it. And if someone someday earned the right to be part of that life, they'd know from the beginning exactly who she was. No hiding, no pretending, no more testing whether people could love her without loving her money. Just Vivienne. Finally, fully freely Vivienne, the woman who'd signed divorce papers in tears at a Thanksgiving party and walked away with her dignity, her billions, and the knowledge that the greatest power isn't controlling others' lives. It's knowing when to let them face the consequences of their own choices. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's simply becoming so completely yourself that their cruelty can't touch you anymore. Vivienne raised her glass to her reflection in the window. Strong, successful, no longer hiding. To new beginnings, she whispered to the woman looking back at her. And for the first time in 2 years, that woman smiled back without reservation. Dear, I was, never judge or mistreat people based on their appearance or status, because you never know who they truly are or what power they hold. The quiet ones you underestimate today may control your destiny tomorrow. Drop in the comments what lessons you learned and what you would have done differently in Vivienne's position. Subscribe for more captivating, educative stories like this.